Well, I'm Dr. Shetlin, and thanks for joining me today. We are going to be covering the Roommate Survivor's Guide, and this is a really exciting topic for me. For those of you that don't know me, Dr. J. Shetlin. I have lived and/or practiced in Korea for an extended period of time, the U.S., and in Europe, in Lisbon, Portugal. And through the course of my life, I've had multiple roommates, including my marriage partners and my kids. Foreign exchange students. I served a Christian service mission where I had multiple roommates as we would change every few months. College, you name it. I've been in positions where just have had to live with several people through the course of my life. And I hope that these experiences that I've had will somehow resonate with you and what you're going through as a roommate at college, or going on a mission, or as a newlywed, or for people who are over the age of 18 and still living at home, because you've switched from being the child at home to being a roommate with your parents, because now you're an adult living in their home. And so all these things that we're going to cover today are pretty powerful. And before I even jump into the book, I just want to cover a really interesting thing with the time concept, because a lot of us think, I just don't have the time to do the things that I need to do, but I just am not making the money that I want to make to reach the goals that I want to reach. I just want to emphasize, I even hear people comparing like today versus their parents' era or their grandparents' era. And I just want to point out, through the course of time, if there's anything we've all had in common through the course of our time on this planet, it is that. Hours per week, time that we all have. And it's all equal. It doesn't matter if you're the president of a country. It doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or a college student. Everybody has 168 hours per week. What we do with those hours are critical, and how we prioritize those hours, and that's up to us. That's up to us on how well are we prioritizing our time to help us live in the moment, engage in the moment, have a wonderful, stellar experience in the moment, and build a better future for ourselves. So you look at somebody like Tony Robbins, who's this world leader and public speaker. He's only got 168 hours in his week, but he prioritized his time to reach the goals that he wanted to reach. And so can you. So I want you to look at the graph that shows in the time of a week, how much time we spend sleeping, how much time we spend eating, how much time we spend working, and how much time is left over to work on your personal growth and development, do your homework, play games, go hang out with your family or your friends. There's just so much still time available when we really break it down. Most of us don't look at it. And when we don't put that on our radar, it's amazing how much time we waste in a week. And even when you're trying to be a black belt at managing your time, there's still going to be time left over that's going to be wasted. So I really encourage you to look at that and look into some other tools we have at the website to help with some time management. Today, let's talk about the Successful Roommates Survivor's Guide and some of the principles to help us just cohabitate better. So let's just say you moved out and you're in the dorm, or you've got some roommates and you're sharing a house. It's like, woohoo, found my own place. Well, mostly on my own. Usually we still need somebody, when we're younger in life, especially somebody, a roommate or something, to help offset some costs. We can afford to live a little more comfortably than we would on our own. Most of us, it's just human nature, want to live beyond our means. It's just natural. We want more. We're always chasing more. And then there's a whole other books and topics on that. We're working on that and just living in the now and being comfortable where you're at and just expressing gratitude for the things you have and how it attracts more to you. But for now, let's just break it down that we want more, but we can't always get more right now. We have to work towards that. So that's what creates the roommate conundrum. It's, how do I afford to live and go to school? How do I afford to live with my new spouse if you're newlyweds and us get ahead in life and start saving up for a house or those kind of things? So thus the roommate conundrum. So here we are, we're living together, and if we do it right, we can end up creating lifelong friends. But if we do it wrong, if we're not recognizing the needs of those around us in the same household that we're sharing space with, and we start having conflict in the house, instead of making lifelong friends, we make frenemies. Right? We have potential friends turned enemy, because most of the time, ladies and gentlemen, it's us. Because we're the only ones we can control on changing. We can't change another person, but we can change ourselves to attract better people to be around, or to make other people around us act differently because of the way that we're engaging. So I really hope you deep dive into these simple concepts we're going to go through today. They're pretty powerful. Three big things. We're going to break it into three categories. First is recognize. You want to recognize what kind of person you are. We'll go over that in a second. Two, you want to have rules and agreements in your house, regardless of how many roommates you have, like I said, living at home still as an adult, or newlyweds, or missionary companions or something like that. You want to have rules and agreements in your house, in your home. And 3, you want to treat that living space and that relationship, those relationships that you're cohabitating with, as a business. Treat your space and your relationships like a business. It'll make more sense as we jump through this. So let's dive into this. First step, recognize. We got to recognize what kind of person we are and the kind of people that we're living with. My friend and mentor, financial guru, Garrett Gunderson, he always says there's 2 kinds of people in the world, consumers and producers. And let me give you some examples. Consumers always take more from life than they give. They're the ones that litter. They're the ones that maybe don't clean up after themselves. They're the ones that expect a refund on everything they buy and stuff. They buy something and take it back and beat up or something. Maybe these are, and if I'm hitting any buttons with anybody, sorry, I'm just trying to use some examples to help us see. Maybe leaving the carts out and they don't put the cart back at the grocery store or the Costco. They just leave it out on the street or pop it up on the curb. They're not taking the time to leave things appropriately how they're supposed to be done. A producer goes above and beyond to leave the world better than they found it, to make sure they're giving more than they're taking from the world. Consumer takes more than they give, producer gives more than they take. A really good example is someone who does put the cart away, or maybe puts another cart away that they saw in the grocery parking lot. Somebody that picks something up when they're out hiking and they see somebody left their water bottle or their candy bar wrapper on this trail out in nature. Who would do that? Jerks. A producer actually pauses, picks it up, and leaves the world a better place than where they found it. In the home, producer mindset versus that consumer mindset makes a big difference because you see it right up close and personal when you're interacting with people. When we start acting more like a producer, it's amazing how that law of reciprocity kicks in and we start seeing more positive things coming back our way. Pretty awesome stuff. So human habits are changeable. If we recognize what some of our characteristics are, then we can take a moment to pause and change them to work on making them better. Again, you can't change others, but if you're as a household trying to make efforts and learn together, it's easy to hold each other accountable to try to up your game and be more producers, less consumers, and actually makes your habitat much easier. So strive to be a producer. It'll help you become a better roommate, a better friend, and a better spouse in the future. So that's a good one to start with. There's an old saying, good fences make good neighbors. And where that's going is it's referencing and establishing and honoring boundaries. And the reason boundaries are so important, ladies and gentlemen, is they give us guidance so that we can be more respectful of each other's space and we're not infringing on each other's, because we all grew up in different scenarios, different situations. Some family values are different than other family values, and now you're thrown into a mix, and you're thinking how your values work, and somebody else is thinking how their values work, and now you're in a community setting where the ethics are different because it's a group think rather than an individual think. So it's important to recognize to have good fences and good neighbors, because when we honor boundaries with each other, we just help have healthier relationships. We have to establish those boundaries. If we don't establish those boundaries and we don't learn from each other what is expected in the household, it's just intentionally or unintentionally we're going to infringe on somebody else's feelings, and we're going to end up with hurt feelings, or we're going to offend, cause some sort of harm in the relationships in the household that otherwise lead to other misunderstandings. Ultimately, these kind of things can lead to an explosion, and sometimes the explosion is what leads to, okay, the breakdown, now let's pause, let's communicate. But if it's done right, if you have the right things built in place in advance and understand, then you don't have to have the explosions. You can always de-escalate things before they've got to that point. But I can tell you this, assumptions always lead to problems. And agreements neutralize assumptions. So when we take time in advance to make an agreement, and we'll talk about later, maybe even making a contract with your roommates, now we can hold each other accountable to what's expected from the group that makes things so much easier and diffuse 90% of the problems. But when you just assume, oh, well, everybody knows that you put the toilet paper on this way, you're assuming that everybody knows that, and it's going to lead to some problems. When you discuss something as simple, and maybe that's overly simple, but oh wait, as a household, we're going to put the toilet paper on this way. We all agree? Aye, we're all in favor of that. Now we know it's an agreement. Not going to lead to a problem later. Simple example, but that's the difference between assumptions and agreements. Now this might sound strange, but especially if you haven't been in experience with much business yet, but I'm going to encourage you to treat your household like a business. Now watch this. Roommates in the military, it's a business. They have agreed and signed the dotted line to become property of the state, and now they're going through basic training, etc. And they have to wake up at a certain time. They have their assigned bed. They have their assigned uniform. Everything is structured and organized. And if somebody isn't pulling their weight, doing what they're supposed to do as a unit, they suffer the consequences from the sergeant. And it's not one person suffers; they all suffer. One person blew it, we all suffer. Okay, that's accountability. So the military operates with accountability, and it treats it like a business. Overall, what's happening is they're setting boundaries, expectations, accountability, and if they do this stuff together, man, the bonds that are built in a unit in the military, I mean, talk about lifelong friends. These people just have an unequal, you don't see this kind of bonds and friendship anywhere else in the world. It's powerful. Now, if you're treating your relationships and your roommates with this kind of respect and setting up these kind of boundaries and accountability, maybe not to that extreme, but even a little bit up, wow, you're living a lot better. So it's important to set boundaries. Watch this. Marriage is a business. It's lifelong roommates with the deepest commitment to one another, love. And now what they're doing is they're taking and they're planning, they're budgeting, they're compromising, they're committed, they're setting up rules and what we'll call hats and posts and guidance in the house. It's such a serious business agreement that's actually contractual. They're making a contract with their clergy or with their state to show, hey, look, we're serious about this business. We have signed on the dotted line. Marriage is a business. Now, when you have roommates, college dorm, off-campus housing, missionary companions, whatever, it's a business. Treat that place like a business so that you guys set up your boundaries, your guidance rules, and your expectations, and you can have your accountability. And then just be loving in how you handle that accountability. But I want to point this out. So in a marriage, for example, a husband and a wife may agree on boundaries of, well, I'm just going to use an example, old school example. She's going to take care of the kitchen. He's going to take care of the garage and the yard. That would be what we call hats and posts. Keeping the kitchen clean, for example, that's a post. The garage and the yard, that's a post. The hats work underneath the post, like doing the dishes is it's a hat in the post of keeping the kitchen orderly. Mowing the lawn, cleaning the garage, those are all hats in the post of taking care of those places. So to fill up that emotional bank account, we'll talk about it a little more later, it's not 100% the responsibility. If something goes wrong, it's the responsibility of the person who's over that post. But they can divvy out those hats, or we can step up and help out with some of those hats and really fill the emotional bank account of that person. Say the husband comes home, he's like, sees some dishes in the sink, she's had a busy day. He goes over and does the hat of doing the dishes, which is her post, but wow, does that fill her emotional bank account, right? Goes both ways. So even though sometimes we assign things, we can still cross over and help each other. But it just gives order and structure. Now, these little things, like I say, fill the emotional bank account. We'll talk about more later. That's really huge. But ultimately, when you have order like this with hats and posts, that's where you need a head of household. And I'll use some examples later. But somebody in the house needs to be either assigned and agreed upon, or sometimes it just organically happens where the head of the house comes out, or you're setting it up as a board. But you can't have order from chaos. You've got to have some sort of structure on who's the person that's going to help guide us in our accountability. Like the sergeant over the company or the smaller troops. It's not like he's the big boss. I guess he is in a military structure, but in the household, it doesn't mean that they're the big boss. They're just somebody assigned to help us keep our contractual agreements or our hats and posts in order. Why is this important? Because in a house, there's communal space. Let me use the example. There's communal space and there's private space, so to speak. Let's just use the example of a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, and you got 3 roommates. Well, that's easy. The only communal space is the kitchen. You all have your own bathrooms, your own sleeping space. But let's take a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Now you're really tripping over each other a lot more common. You got the bathroom that you're sharing and probably the laundry and the kitchen and dining area. It's more complicated. You're in each other's space more. So you want to understand there's your space versus the communal space. So your space, for example, you can go in your bedroom and you can sleep, you can read books, you can watch TV quietly in there, but when things are expanding outside of your space into the communal space or into the neighboring room of your, like loud music or cooking onions in your room, for some reason I don't know who do that, but then you got smells of onions going through the whole place. It's escaping outside of your space into communal space. Well, that creates some unfairness and some discomfort. So you want to be careful of those things because it leads to problems down the road. You want to take action steps to recognize these things and then make some changes. And again, you can only change yourself, not others. So unless you're having little meetings and talking to each other, which we'll talk about later, then you can help guide others, but really you're only in control of changing yourself. You can't change other people. Now, communal space, it's sacred. It belongs to no one, but yet you're all using it. So you always want to leave it ready for the next person. You don't want to leave, like all the national parks say, hey, like leave no trace. You really should try to do that. I mean, you're living in the house, it's livable space. You've got to, there's got to be a little give and take, but for the most part, we really want to try not to leave stuff left over in communal space so it's ready for the next person. It's a business. Think of McDonald's. If you got the night crew and they just left a mess at night and then the morning crew comes in and is like, whoa, what's going on? We got to do all the work of cleaning up from the night crew before we can even start our job that we're here for today. They're going to get irritated and eventually heads are going to roll. It's going to become a big problem. If we don't clean up our stuff, make sure that we left no trace from our stuff so it's ready for the next person, it's going to create conflict. So you want to make sure that you're doing your best to do that. And people will get fired in business, McDonald's, for not doing their job at night to leave for the morning crew or vice versa. And it's the same for roommates. Roommates can get fired. You don't want to be that guy or gal. Don't get fired from your roommates. Make sure you're pulling your weight to make it a comfortable communal living space. Okay, bathrooms are a really interesting example because you want to leave it ready for the next guy or gal. Guys, leaving the toilet seat up. If you didn't learn to put the toilet seat down at home, learn it now. If you didn't learn to go the little extra mile, and if you have the seat down and you dribbled, sorry, we're getting personal here. We're dribbling pee on there. Take a minute, take some toilet paper, wipe that down. If you're peeing all over the place because you weren't raised properly how to aim appropriately, make sure that you just sit down. It's not feminine just sit down and pee every time, but it sure makes things easier to aim, especially in the middle of the night if you have to go to the bathroom. But that way there's less mess. And if you make a mess, you clean it up. Ladies, makeup goes everywhere. You want to make sure that you're cleaning up your makeup so it's not getting all over the place and leaving stains in things. And guys and gals have their different weak spots, but we can all take that adult accountability and just clean up after ourselves and leave it ready for the next person. These go a long way in the reducing roommate conflicts, is keeping those communal areas taken care of properly. The kitchen, the dining area, the bathrooms. Wow. Really recommend you schedule a weekly corporate roommate meeting where you're going over, hey, you're not picking on each other, you're just making comments of recognizing some things that need spaces. The best way to do it, and I highly recommend the sandwich technique, give a good compliment, address something that needs improvement, and then finish with another compliment. That way you're still filling emotional bank accounts, but you're recognizing and taking care of things that need to be improved. And just do it in a tactful way. So helpful in keeping things running smooth at home. Wouldn't you agree? Simple, and yet it works so great. Personal space. I really like this one because it's kind of a earth shaker for some people. You're like, okay, I've got this room, I claim it, it's my room, mine, my space, woo! And you feel all this independence because you got your room, right? Whether you're sharing, we just discussed the communal space, but now we're talking about your room, your space. The shocker is your personal space, unless you own the house, is still not your space. You're renting it. It belongs to somebody else. And so it's really important to understand that it's so disrespectful to not take care of somebody else's property. My dad taught me a lesson years ago when I was a kid. He goes, look, you ever borrow somebody's car or truck? Always return it with a full tank of gas and cleaner than it was when you borrowed it. Producer mentality. You're giving back more than you're taking. You needed something. Somebody helped you out when you needed it, but that law of reciprocity, you gave back a little bit better than what you borrowed. When we do that in a place that we're staying, if our room is just disgusting with crackers and crumbs all over it, and now we're starting to get bugs in there, and we were raised a slob, and I say that lovingly. A lot of us are raised slobs, but we can recognize our personality and our traits, and we can start working on changing them over time. You want to keep somebody else's property clean and maintained, and you should do the same thing for your own, but especially for somebody else's property. If you don't, and you're the roommate that's destroying property or damaging property, the security deposit's going to be affected for all your roommates. So now your choices are affecting a lot more people. And that's where we want to really be careful and really get into that producer rather than consumer mentality so that we leave everything in a good way with our roommates. I'm going to share a story really quick. When I was actually living overseas, I lived in Korea for 3 years, like I said. I taught English for a year, helped pay for college. I did a Christian service mission for a couple years. And I had roommates, mission companions or roommates at the time. And I remember moving into this house, this apartment, with my companion and two other guys that were living there. And I learned from this companion when he moved in, it was pretty messy. And he just gutted the place. I mean, there were cockroaches because it was so messy. The roommates were all just a bunch of slobs. They just hadn't learned good habits before they went out, 19 years old, moving out of home and going to a foreign country. And he just gutted the place, pulled the stove out, just cleaned up really good, got it all organized and set up rules. Said, okay, guys, things have been going, we've been doing X, Y, and Z this long, but from now on we're doing A, B, and C. Here's the rules. Let's keep it together and run this household better. He just stepped in, not intentionally, but stepped in kind of as the house leader. What resulted from that was a much better living experience. And now these young men that had no guidance before, all of a sudden they had some structure, and at least they knew what the rules were, so it's easy to follow rules when you know them. That's why assumptions cause problems versus agreements make it a lot smoother and get rid of most of the assumptions. So now there were rules in place and agreements. So people weren't assuming, the other person will clean up the bathroom, the other person will clean up the kitchen, the other person will do the dishes, the other person will do this. No, we had organization and structure, and then once each week we would pause on a day and we'd spend 30 minutes and blitz and clean together. Worked out amazing. So it goes really, really good with one of Gary Gunderson's rules or suggestions of life, that life is either easy hard or hard easy. You can do it easy and you're just thinking about yourself, and all of a sudden, bam, something hard comes along because you didn't put the work in before. Or it's hard easy, where it's like, boom, you set things up, now it's, did the hard part, now you got the structure, and then it flows a lot easier after. And unfortunately, many of us, we try to do the easy road in high school or after high school and in college, and then life is hard on us later. When we put in that energy and that work early while we're young, we're working 50 hours a week, we're going to school, we're investing in ourselves, we are taking time out. You got to take time to go vacation, and you have to invest in yourself that way too, but you're investing in yourself in those years, then you can build a life with family and retirement that works. But when you're just piddling along in the early years, that law of 72, they call it in the investment world, your money and your personal growth is not growing exponentially. So then later you're like, gosh, why am I still only making so much money? Why am I not further ahead? It's because you didn't put the work in the beginning. You made life easy hard instead of hard easy. So I really want to encourage you to put in the work where you're supposed to. So interestingly enough, after this experience of this household, I moved to another household where there were 4 missionaries there. It was a Buddhist family that lived downstairs. They had an open stairway that they just never used. It came up to the upstairs. And I walked in the house, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I was shocked at how disgusting this household was. It was just filthy, and cockroaches and the whole thing. I dropped my bags. I even swore. I'm like, boys, beep's going to change around here. I was like, I was embarrassed at what I said after I said it, especially being a Christian missionary, but I'm like, wow, we got to make some changes. Well, I can't change other people, right? We can't change others. We can only change ourselves. So I didn't put expectations on them. I spent the next 24 hours deep cleaning, pulling the stove out, cleaning out all the junk that was behind the stove, cleaning the bathrooms that were disgusting, cleaning the rooms really good, wiping down the walls. You name it, it was just top to bottom cleaned. After that, I said, all right, roommates, I've done the work. Here are the rules. From here on out, we're going to take a break each week, and we're going to have a cleaning blitz. And we'll just rotate who does which jobs, but we got to keep this place. I've got it up to this level. Now let's just together as a team, let's keep it that level. I didn't expect them to bring it to a level with me. I did it. I put in the work, then asked after we set up the rules. I did the work, set up the rules, asked for the compliance. They agreed. Now it was much easier. Now what's funny about this story is the owners of the house did not really care for their renters upstairs. There was rumors that they were really disappointed in their renters, and they just were tolerating us for years. One day the lady comes upstairs, and I hear this blood-curdling scream, and I hear her hollering down to her husband, and he comes running up thinking that somebody's died or something. It's like, this is intense. Comes up, and they were just in awe to see their property was finally being taken care of and respected and kept clean and maintained. And it completely changed their relationship with our landlords downstairs. So much so that a few weeks later, it was wintertime and I just happened to get sick and I went to the hospital, found out I had pneumonia. And they were the ones nursing me together, making me soup and doing all this stuff to try to help where they just ignored us roommates upstairs for years until we showed some respect to their property. Wow, so the lessons here is we learned boundaries, setting boundaries and then keeping those, the agreements versus the assumptions. And we learned the collateral benefit of taking care of somebody else's property and how not only was it just the right thing to do, but it reaped rewards where they took care of us. They didn't owe us anything, and yet they nursed me back to health when I was sick. They were my landlords. Who expects that from your landlords? So there's some pretty powerful things when we invest in the relationships around us, roommates, family if we're living at home and we're adults. Maybe you've had some rougher relationships and you're still living at home, and now you can start taking care of your parents' property better. You can start keeping it cleaner. You can start scheduling time each week that you're cleaning up after your own bathroom, doing your own stuff. And your parents are going to go, oh my gosh, what just happened to this person? They're an amazing adult now. With your roommates, it definitely fills up their emotional bank accounts when you're taking care of not only your room and your property, your space, but the communal space. I love talking about relationship capital and roommate relationship capital. And Garrett, I quote Garrett all the time. I just love this guy. He's got so many good quotes. He says, relationship capital is what builds financial capital. People are always trying to chase the dollar, but how do you make money in business if you have a crappy relationship with people you're trying to fair exchange with? You don't. So there is a relationship component in building wealth down the road. There's a component in building the wealth and health of having good, healthy relationships in your house. You want to have good business relationships? Start by having good relationships at home. Okay, work on that. Be financially responsible, because if your roommates are sharing the rent and the utilities, you want to be paying on time so you're not creating stress for other people because you're not pulling your weight. So that's an important part, being financially responsible. Learn how to fill each other's emotional bank account, saying the right things. There are certain words we say that are just huge deposits into somebody's emotional bank account to make them feel better, feel appreciated, respected, and loved by you, that then they want to give back. That law of reciprocity just starts the cycle of that, rather than take. You've bankrupted that emotional bank account with somebody, they want nothing to do with you. You've got to fill it in. You can't just take. Consumer versus producer, right? So make positive behavior choices. Maybe pause and go, I really don't like cleaning dishes, but there's just dishes in the sink. I'm just gonna clean them this time and just do the good deed. And don't expect anything from it. Just do it, and hopefully your roommates will start to learn from your good actions. And if it just doesn't change, of course, you can always get new roommates somewhere. You can go somewhere else. But it's like, imagine a three-legged stool. It just can't balance if we don't balance certain parts. Part of it is that roommate relationship and that financial stuff. So since you guys depend on each other financially, make sure that you pay your rent and utilities on time. Without financial responsibility, you're going to become a consumer. It's going to create friction in the house. So just be on top of that. That's a big one. And typically, we can be voted, quote unquote, voted out of the house if we are not financially responsible. Your roommates are going to go, you know what? You're just not pulling your weight. You're out. Just don't be that guy or gal. Make sure you're always on top of that. It's a pretty important one. And for learning from this with your roommates, let alone with banks look at your financial statements. If you're going to buy a house, banks want to see how fiscally responsible you are. And they understand the numbers. And numbers are very good at helping predict success or problems. For example, if you're going to get a mortgage, the bank's going to require that your income and your expense for that mortgage, your mortgage doesn't exceed 40% of your income. To keep a roof over your head, you should be spending no more than 40%. Same with rent. So it's a good rule for you and your roommates. I suggest living the rule of 10-10-80. Some people call it 20-80, but I like it 10-10-80 because it's 10% goes to you in your future, your savings. 10% goes to a nonprofit or your church, like tithing, or it's going to something that you want to fiscally support that aligns with your values and your morals, that it's your giving away, not expecting anything. But again, this engages that, it's the weirdest thing, how it engages that universal law, the law of reciprocity, where the universe and the world just seem to give back to you because you're a giving person. And then you're supposed to live on the other 80%. This might be a hard habit at first, or to some it's like, well, this is so easy. It really is easy. Once you start forming a habit, it's incredible. So rent should not exceed 40% of your, if you're making $1,000 a month, that means your rent shouldn't be more than $400 a month, right? Simple math. Why is that? Because you want to have that 10% for you, the 10% for giving, and then you want to be able to live on the rest with your utilities, your car payment, your insurance, that kind of stuff. The 10-10-80 rule is an excellent principle to practice because it really helps you discipline. Now, if you're living in a place that's more than you can afford, if it's more than 40% of your income, you need to change because you're off kilter, you're out of balance. If you're with your roommates and you're unable to make your rent each month, you guys have a codependent relationship by nature. Because none of you can afford it by yourself. You can't afford to live this large in your parents' house or in your dorm with your roommates or in your house that you're renting with roommates. You can't afford to live in that nice of a place, that big of a place, without the income from your roommates. So you're codependent. And that's serious business, right? Well, here we are calling it a business again. So that's why it's really serious that you make sure you prioritize getting that rent and utility payment in on time with your roommates so that we don't throw off that codependency in a negative way. Your roommates are trusting and depending on you. So that's important. Man, it's just such important stuff for filling that relationship emotional bank account with your roommates by just being on time with those things, being responsible. When we're not, and we're all human, right? There are times where you're like, I just had to change jobs. I'm going to be off for a week or so. Sorry, roommates, have that communication. Don't just let it pop up on people. Make sure you communicate about it. You never want to leave your roommates in the lurch. Man, you just don't want to do it. It's just instant bankruptcy of the emotional bank account, and that's not good for any of you. So if your rent's more than 40% of your income, fix that as soon as possible. Whether that means that letting your roommates know you're going to have to move to a smaller place, getting another roommate if you've got room for another roommate, whatever it takes, make sure you're living under 40% of your income to keep a roof over your head. It's funny because the banks, like I said, the banks look at that, and when people are beyond that, they know there's going to be all kinds of problems. Or when people don't pay rent on time or don't pay their mortgage on time, the financial world knows this person's finances are so out of whack, we got big problems. If they can't keep a roof over their head, they're probably driving a car that's too fancy. They're probably not paying their other bills. It is very important. Number one bill, roof over your head, okay? Okay, on that emotional bank account, let's revisit that. We want to use the right words that are deposits to help build those relationships with our roommates, because the wrong words definitely take major withdrawals. Be careful of what you say. Words have power. So you want to be selective in your words. If you want to really deep dive, you can read another book that I recommend called Love Languages. When you understand the love languages of your roommates, it just helps this kind of communication go much smoother. But I'm telling you, if you really exercise these skills wisely, you young Padawan, you will soon be a relationship Jedi. And that is powerful not just in the now, but in your future, with your business relationships, with your marital relationships, with your kid relationships, with your, the other book that we have tied to this book is the Relationship Rings. Wow. If you can really manage the roommate thing. Every time you go on a date, some people are like, oh, I don't want to date. I just want to find one person. Dating is so powerful in helping you learn about yourself. Learning the things that you really want and need. Learning from going out with that person and learning and talking with them and communicating, trying to learn some of their wants and needs. Not only are you learning about that person, but you're learning about yourself. So it is really smart to date multiple people, not just jump right into a relationship right from the get-go. It's also so helpful to have roommates. I mean, for somebody to say, oh, well, I just got out of school and was living with my parents and I got married and boom. I'm not saying that doesn't work, but wow, is it powerful for you to have the experience of living with other people and other roommates, learning what their likes and dislikes are, learning what their wants and needs are, learning how to communicate about those, learning your own likes and needs by living with different personalities. It really helps you mature in a way that's going to make marriage much easier. Just saying. Just powerful, powerful. It's like college for relationships, having roommates and learning how to black belt, how to have healthy relationships with people you're living with. Or knowing when it's just not going to work and you need to not be roommates. But man, great experiences for your mental and emotional and spiritual maturity. I want you to listen for potential withdrawals from your roommates. Loud music that's maybe, again, expanding out of your space. Not paying rent on time. We already hit that pretty good. Not cleaning up after yourself. That's definitely going to take withdrawals. Keeping your roommates awake at night because you're playing games and being loud, or you're watching TV and being loud, and they have to work in the morning, they have class in the morning. You want to make sure you're conscious of the needs of those around you so you can be mindful of that and be respectful to that. So be mindful and teachable and willing to change. Those are three really powerful words that help you literally become a Jedi in this kind of stuff. And you might just end up with lifelong friends. Roommate relationship, third part, synergy. Synergy is such a fun word. Synergy equals or means creating something where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Basically 1 + 1 = 3. And I know in the math world people are like, but relationship-wise you can definitely be synergistic. It sounds like the benefits or results of having a group of producers living together, right? That's what producers do. When they get together and have a mind trust, they literally synergize and can make things happen. It seems like magic because they're able to just go beyond what would be expected. That's what you really want to shoot for. But when it's just a room full of consumers pulling each other down, things don't get done. Feelings just get hurt. So we want to make sure we're working on those producer type behavior. Selfish behavior usually leads to hurt feelings, usually stems from that consumer paradigm, that consumer mentality. So we want to work on being more of a producer. Look, I encourage you and your roommates, all of you. It's so much easier when you're all learning things together rather than one person's learning it and nobody else is studying it. Again, you can work on yourself and that still brings up the people around you, but boy, if you're all working on it together as roommates, woo, you can all lift each other up. It's so amazing. I really encourage you guys all to take these principles to heart. Work on having a smooth running home/business, right? Because we talked about it's business. This is life-changing. These principles and practices are powerful. They're so simple, but they're so easy to engage and work on. It's awesome. Expectations lead to discord. Agreements, on the other hand, they clearly define what is expected between people. They allow us to be accountable to each other. It creates joy and rewards. I really wish you guys good luck with this. Now, before we part, there's one more thing we need to address. Borrowing versus stealing. Again, you've just been thrown in with a bunch of roommates. You all grew up with a different barometer, maybe of what's right or wrong on the little things in living together. Some households, they drink out of the milk jug and put it right back instead of pouring it into a cup. Other households, that is unacceptable. You put those two households together, we're going to have conflict, right? It's just simple little things. So in borrowing versus stealing, when we grow up in a house where mom and dad are always providing stuff, we always open up the cupboard or the fridge and it's just full of stuff we just take, use, put back, don't think twice. But now we have different people living together. Everybody's going out and they're working hard. Maybe they're going to school, working, buying some groceries, and we come in and we take, Sally just went and bought some groceries, her favorite thing. She loves graham crackers and milk, and you come in and you take her graham crackers without asking. She comes back, she's like, I just had a hard day's work, where are my graham crackers? Do you see where we're going with this? Now, simple thing, but was that borrowing or stealing? Most of us say, we're roommates, it was just borrowing. Did you ask first, so it was borrowing, or did you take without asking? Now, I don't want us to leverage this against each other like, you stole from me. That's not where we're going with this. We want to make sure that we're recognizing not to overstep bounds and boundaries. That's why we want to have rules and boundaries in the household. It just makes it much easier. When we look at the clear examples of robbing a bank, we know that's stealing. In biblical times, somebody stole a loaf of bread, or if you ever watched Les Mis, stealing a loaf of bread, went to prison for years, or in biblical times, they just cut off your hand. Think of the repercussions of that. I just stole a loaf of bread. Now I don't have a hand. Okay? For the rest of the life, I can't pick up my kids. I can't hold my wife's hand. I can only do certain jobs, can only have one hand. Huge repercussions for one small mistake, an infraction. We don't want to be that out of touch with the reaction, but I'm just saying stealing is different than borrowing. And we want to make sure that we're communicating and we're borrowing. We set up the rules. Maybe you have a community shelf and you have personal shelves. So we never touch each other's personal shelves. We only use the community shelf. Or we always ask before we do something else. And if you do borrow or take something from a roommate, like a can of soup or something, don't just say, oh, hey, here's $1 for that can of soup. They worked hard. They took time to go to the store and drive over there. They had to pay for car insurance and a car, or they walked and they had energy and they did it and they got their can and they brought it back. They put it there. They were going to eat it, and now you just took it. Replace it. Replace it. Don't just pay for it. Now you guys can communicate as roommates and set up your own boundaries and rules. And I'm taking this to the extreme, but I just want to make sure that when we are all living together, as a community, raised in different households with different rules, different background thinking, and we go together, we want to set up so there's not confusion. We want to have those right rules in place. We want to have that understanding and communication. Our moral compass at home that we grew up with might be different than the community ethics compass of a new household, so work on that. Lastly, you'll note the book references a contract. The contract is a written agreement. Totally gets rid of all the assumptions. I would recommend you have contracts with your roommates. I left some examples on drjshetlin.com/success tools where you can download a Word document or a PDF document of the contract and you can tweak stuff, but to go through and make agreements and your roommates go through and sign and agree, initial and then sign at the bottom, that they agree to the different things. And of course you can tweak it and make your own stuff. What if you live in a place that has a garage and it's only a 2-car garage and there's 3 roommates? Well, who gets to use the garage, who doesn't? Add those little addendums to it, but make a contract so you have agreements. You want clarity. When we have assumptions, it always leads to chaos. When we have agreements, it neutralizes most 90% or more of those potential conflicts. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. Please reach out if you have any questions or comments. I'm here for you. My name is Dr. Jay Shetlin. Thank you so much.